Right. So we've been looking at how we can, how our country has mechanisms to cope with disaster, right? So we have the disaster mitigation done at various levels, and one of the main thing is that we want to try to mitigate the effect. It is inevitable, and we can try to only reduce the impact which it is causing on the our lives, right? And again, one of the very important thing is that we need to ensure that we are having what is called as a coordinated effort. Okay, and we also need to have what is called as some kind of roles and responsibility for different people, so that people don't go around doing the same thing as somebody has done, or like going around and undoing the plan of or work of somebody else. So these are some of the very important things which we have been thinking about till now. And one more thing is, many times people don't realize that India has a disaster management mechanism in place. And yes, so we will probably be going through some of the things which we are looking at. Okay, so today we'll be looking at some of the things which some of the practical aspects of the Disaster Management Act. Okay, so the Disaster Management Act is a act which was passed in the year 2005. The act was passed in the year 2005 in Parliament to help communities cope with disaster. So basically, we are looking at communities coping with disaster. What is this? What does this communities coping with disaster mean? If you look at the act per se, it it is not going to give you what we call as the nuts and pieces. First aid, what is the first aid measure, what is this one, that one? No, it doesn't go with that. It gives a broad guideline as to how we should have a national mechanism for ensuring that disasters are not going to overwhelm us. So are we having a framework, a broad set of rules, a broad set of guidelines which will enable us to react or to act in the face of a disaster? So if you look at it, there are about 10 or 15, 10 or 12 different agencies which are directly formed, so that like we can respond in the event of a disaster. One such is the Natural Disaster Response Force, which has been created. In addition to this, there are a lot of other agencies which are also there, right? So basically, what is the Disaster Management Act trying to do? It is trying to look at catastrophes, very bad things, like very big disasters, very big what you call as the impact of some event is going to have a very adverse effect on the people on whom this effect is, or who feel the effect. Okay, so this can be a mishap, right? The mishaps are, for example, the gas leakage from some factories, maybe the explosions which were inadvertently set up, or it can be even the natural disasters, like for example what we are what we are facing right now and what we face on a very recurring basis, floods for instance. So these are what we call as the catastrophic events. So it can be this mishap can be accidental. So this is something which is directly coming from the Disaster Management Act, or it can be the mishap can be due to what we call as it is also caused due to negligence. Okay, so that means if suppose a person is not looking at, I mean, it's one is accidental, where you cannot attribute that somebody was careless, or it can be because of somebody's carelessness, right? And again, it can be caused due to a man-made effect. Okay, I'm just putting man-made on this side, because anything accidental or negligible can be attributed here, or it can be caused due to natural causes. Okay, now these are some of the ways by which the this Disaster Management Act tries to put things. So, but one thing is very important. You will find that whenever you're calling something a disaster, there's a substantial loss. That's a substantial loss. It can be loss of life, it can be loss of property, right? Or anything which is causing substantial disruption. Okay, so I will just put it as, for example, there was an oil spill in Maldives, right? And this is not caused any danger to what you call as life, or not to people's life at any rate, but it has started to destroy the coral, and also it's going to destroy the tourism, right? So it one you may not have actually directly what you call as loss of property, so it can also degrade environment. This is another aspect of disaster. So for example, this one may not, the oil spill is not something which was caused due to any human, it cannot be attributed to human beings. It was definitely due to probably some where people did not follow some of the rules, or they didn't see whether the water depth was deep enough for the ship to go safely, so on and so forth. Okay, so environment, whenever environment is also damaged or degraded, we can call it as what you call as a substantial loss. So all of these things are coming under our Disaster Management Act. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about a few disasters, especially the natural disasters, earthquakes. Okay, earthquakes, and when I put cyclone, I'm also putting floods alongside with it. Right. In fact, we had a very nice discussion just at the start of this class as to what would be the impact of a what you call as a excavation which is very close to a building, especially when it is filled with water. Okay. And in the north, you'll often hear about hailstorms north of India. Okay. And we also have what are called as cloud bursts. Okay, cloudbursts happened in Jammu and Kashmir and areas like that. And we were also talking a lot about landslides. And we've been the other things are like, for example, maybe the avalanche which some of your friends put out in the beginning of the class. So there are a lot of other things. Okay, now coming to our national framework. Okay, the national level, they have identified the national level classification of disasters. Okay, so how does our country classify the disasters? This is something which we will probably have a very brief look at, and I'm going to specifically focus more on the natural disaster part, but in any rate. So you have the following classification: water and climate related. So most likely you'll find that all of these are what you call as the natural disasters which we talk about. The next is the geological disasters, or we can say that those which are related to geology. Then the other one is chemical, which is going to be based on the industrial, or no, we can also call it as industrial disasters, right? Again, moving beyond, like in the previous class, we were talking about accidents. So it can be a catastrophic road accident. Okay, like sometimes, some time ago we had a petrol lorry hit the median, and then there was, like a very huge disruption. Now, whether the scale was large or small, let's not worry about it. It caused enough hardships. Then there were these cases of two trains colliding, like running on the same line and colliding with each other. Okay, like what happened? There's still a lot of loss of life, and it's not a very nice thing to speak about. And again, like flooding of mines. This happened. This happened about 2 or 3 years ago. Again, if you look at it, it is a very localized, what do you call as a event, but still, when you look at it, it is a disaster on many fronts. Okay, so so on and so forth. Okay, then now, for example, we are having the epidemic which is happening, the pandemic which is happening, which is definitely going to be of the category biological in nature. So this is how our national level has what you call as categorized the accidents. So if you look at it, for your syllabus, or in your syllabus, these are the areas which we are talking about. However, the other accidents, I mean other classifications, can also cause equal amount of, or or as much of a problem as the others, right? So one of the very interesting things is that now the current date allows us to collect more information than any other time, right? So we are having more information which is processed, which is helping us to assess impact of a disaster, or to see the what you call as the way we have recovered from a disaster. So it's now getting more and more what you call as transparent in some of the fronts. And if you ask, I mean, like, what is the most important type of disaster which India faces? It is nothing but water and climate. Okay. Now, I really wish that all of you will start to look at India as a place where disasters can take place, and not go for China, Malaysia, or any other such. Okay. So now this is again like one of the things which I want you to think about, that Indians also have that much of information. Okay. Now, one thing is there, because of the number of people who are what you call as the population has also increased, so probably there is also the impact on the human life has also probably increased with time. And many times it could be that the pre-past, the data couldn't have been accurately captured as accurately as what we are able to do now. Of course, as time goes, it could become even more accurate, but till such a time, one thing is certain: we are now having much more information than ever before. Okay, and uh, yes, if you look at it globally, India is very high in terms of the vulnerability to natural disaster. Of course, one, with a large population; two, with the setting around us. If you look at India, it's having a very long coastline, very exposed coastline. So automatically, the amount of wind which is going to come in, causing cyclones, or I mean floods, because of the heavy rains. And very importantly, we are more prone to have more wind in coming in from the sea than in most of the other places, right? And again, India is one of those countries which are actually moving, and Himalayan mountains, like if you remember your geography, you would have learned that they are young fold mountains, right? So when you look at it, it's because of the movement of the tectonic plates that we are having those things happening. And again, if you look at the other things, like we are very prone to floods, famine, heat wave, cold wave, and all the other things which we've been discussing till now. And again, one more thing is, with each of these disasters, you will find that you'll find that the West Bengal chief minister asking for a certain, I mean, like all the numbers are very huge as disaster mitigation packages from the center. Okay. We've been looking at what you call as some of the very big events, like droughts, floods, and also famine. In famine of late is not a very big thing, because we are having sufficient amount of food security, right? And so again, but heat wave, cold waves, and these are all things which we cannot really talk much about right now. Okay. But and again, even now, if you see things like landslides and stuff keep happening. And yes, so these are probably some of the what you call as the biggest challenges which India faces. There are other things like forest fires and stuff like that which may happen, which are not like very which do not cause much damage, at least in the Indian context. Okay. Now, moving on, if you look at what you call as the if you look at the Disaster Management Act per se, we have now got what we call as some of the major divisions of uh, the disaster as classified. right? Now let us see how we are going to how what happened is how this act came. So actually what happened is, right from around 1900 we have documented history of what we call as earthquakes, for example, I'm sorry, of disasters. So although it was thought of, even in the time of the British, that we are going to have what is called as the we are going to have what is called as a disaster management framework. All of this didn't come through till the year 2005. So only then we had what we call as the major thing of major framework for disaster management, which was done. Okay, so earlier this was how the government brought it out. So initially there was the government of India which was sitting at the top. Then they had a cabinet. They have a cabinet committee. So ministers of the cabinet, Union Parliament, they have the committee on natural disasters. So they have a separate group of ministers who will looking after natural disasters. And again, there is the Home Affairs Ministry, which has some few things, and together together both of these have the NDMM, Natural Disaster Mitigation Agency, NDMA. NDMM is our paper. NDMM MA is the agency which looks after this one, the natural disasters. So both of these together look after our NDMA, or the Natural Disaster Mitigation Agency. Many times you also have a high level committee. So this high level committee could be comprised, it can be eminent citizens, people who are going to get affected by the impact, or who will be able to contribute to the recovery and stuff like that, are all going to be part of this. So all these people have what we call as a stake in the NDMA. Now, once you look at this, if you notice now, for example, you are having the state police, the revenue officials, all of them contributing to the this is the state machinery, right? So even the army, for example, if you look at the flood affected or flood prone areas, you'll find that the army is also deployed in these regions. Okay, the army is also deployed for looking after such things. And on the other side, we have agencies like the fire department. Okay, then we have agencies like the home guards. uh, Home guards are they are also uniformed services, but they are not they are voluntary, purely voluntary in nature. Then you have people like your NSS and stuff like that, who will also be looking after what you call as, who can also be called in during a disaster to help mitigate the action, right? So you will also have, for example, some of the paramilitary forces coming under this heading. So these are the people. So if you look at the Natural Disaster Management Act per se, it calls for some of the people to be brought in, some of the people who will be what you call as looking after these actions. What do you mean by these actions? I mean that if suppose there is a disaster, these are also people who will be called to be brought into or pressed into helping out in the mitigation of the disaster. In all of this, over and above, the community is also involved. Now, look at the look at how you and I are placed. See, we are all under what we call as we are all under instructions by the government not to move out unnecessarily. So today, for example, if suppose you see, many of people of your age group, the youth, are targeted for loitering around. I mean, like, at least in Vellore it was like that. Police used to go around earlier in autos making announcement. if youth are found roaming around, you will be punished. You will be this will be done, that will be done. Okay, so that means the main thing is that the community was under control by the police also. But now what has happened, including many of you, you don't go out unnecessarily because you realize that the pandemic is not, I mean, like, it's not a situation which where you'd like yourself to be part of, or you don't want to get affected, you don't want to infect others. So this is what is an example of the community getting into the action. So community itself gets sensitized. So suppose you are in a flood prone area, and if suppose all the members of the community are able to understand how, or what can be done, what should not be done, you will find that it is going to be a very uh, it will be very good, right? Instead of having somebody force you to do something, and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically if you look at today, the main thing is, you have two very important things in the Disaster Management Act. One, you have the NDMA, which is itself which is the act which does everything. So probably I will not put this as one. Under this, you have a national executive committee. So this is to help the natural disaster mitigation authority, which has been formed to what we call as the take care of all the I mean, like, suppose there's a policy decision which is being taken, how we can probably go about this. So under this, you have the state disaster mitigation agency, and again under this we have the state executive committee. See, we have a national executive committee, okay, which helps you in getting things done. Under this, you have the state executive committee. So under the so this means that once one is at a national level, the other is the state level. Now it gets little more interesting. You have the, so let me put this as second, this is first. Third, you have the district disaster management authority, district disaster management authority. So of course under this, like, you don't have another executive committee, but what happens is you will have some institutional framework, and you will have some like, for example, if it's a metropolitan city, for example Chennai, so you will find that there will be some other reforms which, or some other setup which has been done, which is very specific for that city. So this is why I was insisting that all of you go back to your own district. Go for your own district, see what is the framework which has been done. Because you will find that in most of the cases, the districts will align itself with the state policy. The states will align itself with the national policy. So you will find that there's a lot of convergence from the national policy which has been given, and on the other way around, based on the guideline which the national committee sets up, you'll find that the states form its own rules, which are based on what we call as the national levels decision. So that's why, like, one of the things, if you notice, I will again put it as only Tamil Nadu. Whenever Tamil Nadu, in the current pandemic situation, if you notice, our chief minister waits for the prime minister to give a directive. So once that directive comes, we can all be aligned, instead of trying to say, okay, we will not do this, we will not do that. We get an alignment of the policy, so that we have unity in thought and direction, right? So this is about this is the very big or broad framework. And I wish to, like, maybe we've been talking a lot about this frameworks a lot. I wish to go beyond this from the next class onwards. Now if you have any questions about this, about what we have spoken about, like, for example, or the NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, or probably any other such question, I'll be very happy to answer that, please. Any questions, please?